Hey, how's it going everybody? Chanwin26 here and welcome back to my channel for another video. Today I'll be covering some more Master League Classic battles that I played live on stream. If you want to check out all the battles, just go to my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Chanwin26 to check out the VOD and all the commentary I provide throughout the sets. But today I decided to do something a little different. I decided to deviate from my normal team of Mewtwo, Giratina, and Excadrill. I still think that team is relatively fairly strong, and I can still play it consistently well. But when you play the same team for a long period of time, especially in Master League, it can become very repetitive and stale. Unlike Great League and Ultra League, the pool of viable Pokemon in Master League is exponentially smaller, so you are susceptible to running into the same situations a lot more frequently. So today I decided to try Garchomp lead, Groudon, and Lugia. It's also worth mentioning I don't have a Lugia on my main account, so if I ever want to experiment with it, I have to switch over to Street Kong. But yeah, I decided to try out this team for no particular reason. I just want to keep the game fresh for myself, and it gives me experience and exposure to situations I'm not entirely familiar with, and it keeps me in practice in Master League. So it's also worth mentioning that for the very first match I have Mudshot on my Groudon, but for the following matches I have Dragon Tail. So just wanted to throw that out there and keep that in mind. So my Garchomp lead into their Male Metal. Very favorable lead for myself. Even though I'm running Dragon Tail, it's still a fairly one-sided matchup. It really just depends on what my opponent wants to do, but no matter what, I kind of dictate the way this matchup goes. From the Male Metal's perspective, they could just straight Superpower and just sacrifice their Male Metal. They can chip and dip, farm a bit of extra energy, throw a Superpower, bail out, that sort of thing. As you can see, they're going to throw one Superpower, that's perfectly fine. Does, around 35%, so not very threatening against my Garchomp. And as you can see, they swapped out, so they chipped and dipped, and I decided to go up to a Outrage by throw a Sand Tomb. Some people may say it's questionable, but, they may decide to shield if they think it's an Outrage, but they decide to let it go, which is perfectly fine. At the expense of me throwing the Sand Tomb, they do get a energy advantage on my Lugia, but they are debuffed, so they are taking a bit of extra chip damage from these Dragon Tails. Because I know they're at a huge energy lead, I decided to play it safe. I expected them to Aero Blast, so I decided to shield the first one. And of course, an Aero Blast doesn't KO the Lugia by any means, but yeah, like I said, I'm playing it safe. And because they are debuffed, I decided to go Sky Attack. And I do get a shield in response, so that's really good. I get the shield back. I also get an extra Dragon Tail there as well, so these Dragon Tails are really adding up. They throw Sky Attack, and as you can see, not very threatening, but they do take the initiative to swap in their Male Metal. It is a play. The Rock Slide doesn't KO, so no matter what, I'm still going to get this Aero Blast off. So it's really just a matter of whether they are going to shield or not. And they decide to let the Aero Blast go, which is actually, a little surprising. But then again, they now have a Garchomp, so they may feel prepared to sack their Male Metal, considering. They bring in a Yveltal, and I decide to aggressively swap to my Groudon. At this point of the stream, I actually thought I had Dragon Tail, so I made the aggressive swap. It wasn't until I swapped in and saw the Mudshots that I realized I didn't have Dragon Tail. So, kind of a brain fart moment, and I'm thinking to myself, this matchup isn't as comfortable now. So now I'm locked in, but my Groudon's job is just to get as many Fire Punches as I remotely can against this Yveltal. I still have a bit of excess energy on my Garchomp because I did throw the Sand Tomb instead of the Outrage on the Lugia. And it's also very important that I time my fire punches accordingly so I don't let any extra snarls through. As you can see, the Fire Punches do a fair bit of damage, but not enough to completely threaten a Yveltal. So I shield the Dark Pulse. If I let it through, they would KO my Groudon, so I get another Fire Punch off. And because they were in the middle of the Snarl animation, I know it's not a CMP. They decide to shield, which is really good. And instead of throwing, I decide to catch the move with my Lugia. A Fire Punch at that range wouldn't KO anyways, so it would have been a tricky situation. But catching the Dark Pulse on my Lugia is huge. And in this situation, I decide to bring in my Garchomp. I'm just going to take the initiative to start the farming process. And as you can see, they were a little slow on their swap, and this allows me to get that outrage off on the Lugia. This will KO. And as you can see, these Dragon Tails really hurt. Unfortunately, they can't farm down with the Yveltal, so they're forced to use their energy. But in this position, they won't have enough for another charge move. And whether I Fire Punch or just, Mud Shot down, either way, it's GG. And as you can see, it was coming close to the wire. There was 16 seconds left on the clock before I threw the Fire Punch. So we almost took the full amount of time to finish this match. Good against my opponent. Considering they had a bad lead, they played it out fairly well. So on to the next match. So my Garchomp into another Melmetal. So Melmetal seems to be fairly common. And as I explained before, it's a fairly one-sided matchup. Definitely favored in my Garchomp side, even if I'm running Dragon Tail. So I expect the matchup to play fairly similarly. Either they sack it or they, get a bit of extra residue energy, they superpower and, bail out. This time around, I played out slightly differently. They brought in Lugia, but I decided to outrage this time. Outrage for the chip damage. They are ahead of me in terms of one Dragon Tail, but even if they outpace me, I'm still in a very comfortable position because I got that outrage off. So this could be either an Aero Blast or a Sky Attack, but either way, none of them actually threatens my Lugia. So it is an Aero Blast, and it does a fair bit of damage. And, poor execution on my part. I could have timed my charge move better so I could deny that Dragon Tail, but it is what it is. But at this point, I'm able to farm down the opposing Lugia, and I save on some energy, which is really good. And I imagine they would bring back their Melmetal. So I'm going to throw the Aero Blast here. Sky Attack, like neither move is really threatening to a Melmetal, but if I'm only going to get one move off, I'd rather go for the big move. I decided to take the initiative and actually bring in my Garchomp, because I have two responses for the Melmetal, so worst case is that, they KO my Garchomp, but, if they bring in a counter, I could just Sand Tomb it for some for the debuff. But which is actually really surprising is that they actually stay in to KO my Garchomp, so they're offloading all their energy. So they're debuff ×2, but I can't imagine they stay in and allow me to farm them down. They want to save their Melmetal and reset. So they bring in Yveltal. And this time around, because I swapped my fast move to Dragon Tail, you can see just by the HP bar of my opponent that these Dragon Tails are chunking slowly but surely. Unlike Mudshot does nothing to Yveltal because it's resisted. So this is one of those situations where Dragon Tail is a lot more dominant in the matchup. And of course, Groudon versus Yveltal, you just go straight Fire Punch. No reason to go Earthquake. It's resisted and, a lot more energy. Another Fire Punch, my opponent shields. They get their charge move off, so I decide to just, shield the Yveltal no matter what they throw. The Yveltal is a lot more threatening than the Melmetal, so it makes sense to just shield whatever it throws instead. And of course, I decide to catch a move with my Lugia, and yeah, at this point, things are looking really grim for my opponent. Nice attempt at a salvage by undercharging so they could farm down, but at this point, it's a little too late. Groudon wins CMP against Melmetal, and they already used all their energy, so they shouldn't have enough for superpower anyways. And at this point, it is GG. There's really not much they can do. And I'm just going to farm down the Yveltal with the Dragon Tail, and yeah, good games to my opponent. So on to the third match. So my Garchomp into another Melmetal. So that's 3 consecutive Melmetals in this set. So I'm not sure if Melmetal lead is extremely popular or if someone made a team on it. But yeah, that's good news for my Garchomp because it's just a one-sided matchup for the most part. They threw a superpower. And surprisingly, they don't swap out, which is a little surprising. Sandtomb doesn't really threaten a Melmetal, but because they're debuffed, it does a little bit more damage. And they actually took the initiative and swapped into Zekrom aggressively. Really surprising considering my Garchomp has Dragon Tail and Sandtomb, so yeah, a really surprising play on my opponent's part. They farmed out my Garchomp, but they shouldn't be at a charge move, and that's at a really bold play by my opponent. Not something I agree with in that situation. So they bring in Yveltal, and because my Groudon has 2 shields and Dragon Tail, it can play out this matchup very comfortably. Because I've seen their entire team and I know they have a Melmetal, I can just sack my Lugia without, you know, having to shield anything. It's just a sponge to absorb any energy that my opponent has accumulated. And they bring their Melmetal back in, which is perfectly fine. A Rock Slide doesn't KO at this range, so I'm just gonna try to get to an Aero Blast and, you know, offload my energy. A little risky on my part, but I get to the Aero Blast and, you know, let's see what my opponent does from here. My opponent decides to shield. And my opponent is going to throw as many superpowers as they possibly can. It's also worth mentioning that if you know that you're going to shield in the matchup versus Melmetal at any point, it's ideal to shield the first superpower because it does the most damage. You know, every time you superpower, you debuff yourself in the process. So, yeah, just worth noting. I can't farm down the Melmetal without having just shield, so I'm just gonna throw the Fire Punch and see what my opponent does. They decide to shield their Melmetal and preserve it. Of course, I have to start shielding something. If I let it go, it KOs my Groudon. And then, of course, I'm just going to have to commit to my second shield here. But fortunately for me is that this Yveltal has just enough HP for me to farm down and get a charge move. My Groudon wins CMP against Melmetal, so even if they have a move, I win the tie unless I desync at the, you know, the CMP. And of course, my app crashes right there. To no surprise, I'm sure that's happened to a lot of us. But at least it crashed, you know, after the match and not during, so, you know, have to be grateful there. Garchomp into a Groudon. Really just depends on whether the Groudon has Dragon Tail or Mudshot. And in this case, it does have Dragon Tail, so these fast moves are, like, really adding up on my Garchomp. I was able to get a Dragon Tail through right there, which is really good. And this is just a Fire Punch, so I don't need to shield this to survive. And I decided to go Sandtomb here. Of course, I could go Outrage, but it really just depends on my opponent. I'm able to get the shield, which is really nice. Unfortunately, my opponent was able to get a Dragon Tail through, so that prevented me from getting to a second Sandtomb. But that's perfectly fine, because I do have a Lugia for this Groudon. So any energy they accumulate is kind of, you know, useless because they can only throw Fire Punches here. Unless they had Fire Blast, but that's really unlikely. They aggressively swap into Melmetal, which prompts me to bring in my Groudon. I'm able to get a Dragon Tail through, which is really nice. And of course, they're just going to go straight Superpower as usual. Because they're locked in, I imagine that they, you know, just completely sack it without shielding. The Melmetal's job is just to, assuming to bait out the counter and just chip it down as much as possible. because they are debuffed, a Fire Punch would KO from here, assuming they don't shield, so it really just depends on what they want to do. They decide to let their Melmetal go, and they have a Lugia in the back. Fortunately for me, I do have Dragon Tail, so my Groudon isn't completely walled through fast move pressure against this Lugia. If it had Mudshot, it would be very uncomfortable. So I'm going to throw this Fire Punch, and because I know I'm not going to get to another charge move, I'm going to take the initiative to swap back into my Lugia. I do have a shield advantage, and I do have some energy stored. Because I have 2 shields, I kind of expected them to Sky Attack, so I decide not to shield here. It is a risky play. You know, if they Aero Blasted there, then they definitely could have won the game. And I also allow a Dragon Tail to go through right there, so that's not ideal. I get their final shield, which is really nice. And I get a Dragon Tail through as well. But at this point, I need to start shielding. They throw a Sky Attack, they get my first shield. I'm farming a little, and it looked like they lagged a bit, or they just stopped attacking. I'm not really sure what happened there, but yeah, I throw a Sky Attack. They swap into their Groudon. Yeah, just gonna Sky Attack here. They don't have any shields, so this will KO. And yeah, that's pretty much GG. Even if they had a charge move, I still have a shield, so all it takes is one Dragon Tail to KO the opposing Lugia, and yeah, GG's. And the final match of the set. So my Garchomp lead into a Giratina. Fortunately for me, this is actually a pretty decent matchup for myself. I can take an Ominous Wind, I can take a Shadow Ball without having to shield, and it's really unlikely that they have Dragon Pulse. Not many people use it. So I'm just going to go straight Sand Tomb. I don't need to shield if I don't want to. Oh, sorry. For some reason I thought I tapped my charge move, but I decided to go Outrage here. And of course an Outrage would KO if they decide not to shield. And they bring in a Groudon with Dragon Tail. I'm not able to get to another charge move. That's perfectly fine because I do have Lugia. They aggressively swap to a Steel type, which is their Melmetal. And of course I have Groudon as a response. So things are looking really grim for my opponent. It looked like, you know, swap advantage was everything, so they really need to win that initial matchup. But because I have Garchomp, it was a little unlikely, unless they played the 2-shield scenario. So the Melmetal is going to go straight Superpower, debuffing themselves in the process. And here I can just go straight Fire Punch. You know, if I decide to let this Superpower go, it's extremely risky, but I decide to shield. I don't want to take too many chances, but it would have made more sense if I shielded the first Superpower, because of course it does the most damage. Because they're triple debuff though, a Fire Punch would KO at this range, so it makes sense that they are shielding. They're probably just stalling out the switch clock so they can swap back to their Groudon. So my job here is to shield my Groudon, store a Fire Punch, and then swap back to my Lugia. Save a Fire Punch for the Melmetal, because if it comes down to a CMP time, my Groudon wins against the Melmetal. So as long as I killed the Groudon, I'm perfectly fine here. And of course, there's nothing in the move pool except for Fire Blast that threatens my Lugia. So yeah, things are looking very grim for my opponent. I'm going to throw a Sky Attack here. It is going to KO the Groudon, and even if they have energy on the Melmetal, it really does not matter. It would take 2 Rock Slides to KO my Lugia, and yeah, they're going to throw a Rock Slide here. It's not going to KO, We should have CMP tied, so my Aeroblast should go off. And like I said, even if they KO'd my Lugia, yeah, I still have a Fire Punch ready on my Groudon, so no matter what they do in this situation, it is completely over. The Aeroblast goes through, they don't have any shields, that KOs, and yeah, good games to my opponent. Yeah, I feel like Switch was everything in that matchup, and because they didn't win it, the game just snowballed out of control. That was my first set of the day on this account, and you know, starting off with a 5-0 is really nice, especially with the dust bonuses going on. And I was at 3069, and I went up to 3143, so climbing over the 3100 threshold, which is really nice. Of course, we have Gold Battle Night on the weekend, so probably not the best idea to, you know, climb. Of course, that wasn't my intention or anything. Like, it just happened to be very coincidental. I got a bunch of good leads, so yeah, I was able to take advantage of that situation and, you know, just play out the situations accordingly and execute to, you know, win these matches. Overall, I do like Garchomp. Of course, it's very risky. When it's up against something like a Dragon Breath user, like, it is very, very fragile, and of course you don't want to see a Togekiss. So of course it has its good matchups just like any other Pokemon, but it also has very bad matchups. But in neutral matchups, it does have a lot of pressure. A lot of its damage does come from the Dragon Tails, and it can debuff with Sand Tomb. So even in a losing matchup, like if you Sand Tomb, you can farm down with the second Pokemon and then just you know, hope that energy advantage is enough to swing like the future matchups. But yeah, I do like the Pokemon. Probably gonna play a little bit more just to get a feel for it. I don't play it too often, especially in Master League Classic. Groudon, very solid, especially with the Dragon Tail adjustment, and Lugia is just a very solid tank, and it's able to, you know, push a decent amount of damage considering. Overall, they're all strong Pokemon in their own right. You just need to find the right situation for it to, you know, shine. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the gameplay. Of course, if you watch my stream, you're no stranger to these matches because you watch them live. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you continue to have good luck in your GBL matches. I appreciate you taking the time to watch my video. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you later.